everybody, and welcome here to a Kerfuffle interview showcase with Mr. Richard Murray of Eurolink and Veco. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. We're here. I don't know what day this goes out, but we're here on a Friday, so we're going to keep things tight, aren't we? You've promised me that. No one,
absolutely.
Nobody keeps me from my Friday night curry as most important. But I'm quite keen to talk to you first of all, as ever. I've got to doff the cap, as it were. Esther's the other day, you proudly walked away with yet another gong. You got the supplier for CRM for the second year running. Am I right in thinking?
Yeah, that's right. We got the CRM software supplier of the year. Yeah, from the Esther's second year. We were really pleased. And as you know, it's all about reviews. It's a review-based.
It's all about the clients, isn't it? All about your clients, and everyone's saying it. So as they always, Simon and Sarah always say, it's one of the most tightly validated awards and voting systems out there. So it's a real plaudit to win there, isn't it?
It's certainly the one that we've kind of bought into over the last few years in terms of for exactly that reason. And then I would say we offer sort of industry-leading service, and we get lots of accolades about it, but we're not that good at shouting about it. So that was a great platform to say, well, actually, if you think we're good, well, can you go on this platform and let people know? So yeah, it's worked well for us. If
you need something shouting about, I've got a man who can do that. So that's what I'm here for. So over the course of the next few minutes, we're going to find out for this. Look, being really honest, obviously, when we were jousting in the past, obviously, before I saw the light and said, I was going to become agnostic of all of these things. I was going to become Proptex Yoda and not pick and choose. You guys, you didn't shout from the hilltops about a lot of stuff. You quietly got on with doing stuff. But one of the things that I always spoke about was, and I've always been clear, whether it was when I was at the previous company or not, is the thing that you guys are extremely well known for is some of the automation and efficiencies that your software can bring. That really was, when we used to look at it sometimes, we were thinking, how do we even unravel, even if the client wanted to see it? It's just so hard to be able to do that. And so that's why today is we're talking here about how Veco can bring significant efficiencies to estate agents. Following on from that kind of a subcategory here, should agents automate or outsource property management and client accounting? And just to put this into context as well is, so, there's a lot of obviously fly-by-night companies that bounce in and out of this kind of CRM, especially on the property management and account side of things. But just to put your credentials on the table, you've been around now for the best part, is it over 2 decades or is it
it's 32 years.
32 years.
32 years, yeah. Not me personally.
I know I look like Peter Pan, but that's impressive. And you certainly look far better than me. But again, in terms of what you're known in terms of that expertise on the property management and the accounting side, I'm right in thinking, you've got over 500,000 properties, bouncing around the different packages you've got for some of the very biggest agents in the country. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work right across the industry. Sort of large independents, sort of SME space, upwards, regional branded, regional brands, franchisee, franchise operations, right up to Connells, really, right up to and including Connells, Linley and Simpson.
Don't get bigger than that.
Don't get bigger than that. Linley and Simpson and ours were a client from 2 offices, and look where they've ended up. I mean,
that business in itself, isn't it? In terms of what it does is just exceptional. I mean, as you said, it's not like, God, the guys at Connells are great, and I know a lot of the other businesses that you deal with, but Linley and Simpson, they do some really special stuff, don't they?
Look, it's not rocket science. The clients of ours who over time have invested in automation are the ones that have grown the fastest and have become the biggest, our biggest clients. And I mean, Linley and Simpson, for instance, it's not any big trade secrets here. They've got over 240 automated processes.
Yeah, I can probably admit now it was them that I've tried to lure away. And despite how many drinks and how many dinners I had no chance about doing it. It doesn't matter really how good you are at networking if the software's doing stuff like that. That's just, just to get your head around that. did you say 200? How many? 200?
At the moment, there's just over 240. And again, that could be anything from like managing their arrears. Now, that might be a number of automated processes to manage that overall part of their business service. Renewals is an area where massive automation around renewals.
Well, we're going to come on to that later, aren't we? I want to talk about that in a bit more detail. But yeah, I mean, I think when you look at that for a business, and especially when you start to scale out, I mean, anybody starts to get the benefits from a CRM package. But especially when you start to put in place these automations. The other day, it was interesting actually. We were both, at EM Masters the other day, Peter Knight stood on stage and said one of the most important factors he believed agents should be looking at and focusing on in their businesses in what parts can be automated now. And that makes obviously perfect sense. Everything you can automate wins you back another minute or hour in the day, doesn't it? Where you can focus on the truly dollar productive stuff that makes you different. And that's got to be what technology is about at its core, hasn't it?
Well, giving people time back in a people business that you and I have always advocated. It's a people business. No matter what tech we produce, it will always be a people business, in my opinion. Yeah. And our job, therefore, is to give them that time back, to continue to build the relationships, to make sure that they're doing, as you say, the important stuff, the deal making.
Yeah, and how refreshing that is, by the way, to hear a techie, though, talking about that it is a people person, rather than sitting in our ivory towers and saying, the tech's going to do all this, you're not going to. That understanding, come again from those 32 years of being in the business, is where actually, the best businesses, they understand that balance and get it right.
Well, we've been automating for about 20 years within that period, and we didn't see it as such a complex delivery, really, and it turns out it is. We just didn't realize what we'd created. And the difference with us is we bespoke it out, so we know that our clients all do the same thing slightly differently. Yeah. And that's where that's where it makes it difficult,
and that's where your individual approach, rather than treating everyone as a homogenized client, though, as some prop tech businesses sometimes do, that ability to say, well, look, that business is very different to that business, and that's the nicheness of it comes out in terms of we have to have a product that, yes, does the basics at a basic level, but also then has the ability to be configured to match the way that the agent works, rather than them having to change it the other way around.
Absolutely. Well, you look back when we both had our demo boots on, and you're walking into demos, and you're trying to, we're not going to walk into a demo and tell these guys how to run their business.
No.
They know how to run their business, and they know how they want to run their business, and they've got an as-is and a to-be process that they want to move from and to. That's why we were in the room, and our job was to tell them how we could help them get to that to-be state, if you like. And that's the exciting thing. That's the exciting thing that we do. Yes, it's a people business, but without the technology, I think people will be drowning these days, particularly with rent reform coming. I think it's going to get even worse.
Okay, cool. Well, let's kick off with the first one then. So, when should agents outsource client management and accounting? What do you feel is there a right time to do that, or should it always be kept in house?
Look, I'm obviously going to say I'm not an advocate of it, because that's what we deliver. We deliver that end-to-end solution. I've looked at it down the years. I've looked at the model, and I get it. Obviously, the pitch is great. We'll take all the headache away from you. Don't worry, guys. You guys do your deals, which is what we've just been talking about. To be fair, you guys go do your deals. We'll take care of all the back end. The problem is, I think, in my opinion, when I've seen it work not so well, is it just becomes very disjointed. I don't think everyone's on the same page, no matter how good a service the outsourcers have tried to deliver. I think there are certain circumstances. I think a franchise model, in my opinion, it would work well, because a franchise, in its purpose, is there to provide a brand, a service effectively, or multiple services to its franchisors. Yeah. If a franchisor can say, well, I want to get out and do the deals, and I want to outsource, you're both on the same page, because you both want to protect the brand. No one's going to cause any problems for anyone else. You're joined up. Everything looks and feels like you're dealing with the same organization. Whereas, think of it from a consumer point of view. Unless it's unless there's some sort of branding layer in front of all that, who am I dealing with? Yeah. Who's answering the phone? Is it the same people answering the phone if it's outsourced? I don't know. I think outsourcing
credibility and trust is all, as we know, isn't it? So that's a massive point.
And then the other sort of concern I would have for agencies, where is the money? Where are those client monies? Where are the deposits? Where and whose liability is all this ultimately? So I would say if anyone was looking to outsource, all I would say is just do your homework, do your due diligence on the company. Who are they? Where are they? How long have they been around? And make sure all that kind of AML, everything, all the kind of money side is taken care of. Yeah. Because I haven't looked into the detail of the contracts, but I would imagine it remains the liability of the agent ultimately, even though they are outsourcing it to another company.
At a top level, though, Richard, what would you say the advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing were or are?
Well, the advantages, I guess, for me are obvious, and it's what we've just talked about. It's taking the headache away. It's just taking the headache of the 10 o'clock call at night that you really don't want to have to take. Yeah. About your, the boiler that's blown up in the rental property. So, the advantages, I guess, are it takes the headache away. It allows you to do what you should be doing, and that's looking for more business and helping you grow. I just think that the disadvantages is the disconnect, is the lack of relationships. Because you think, a landlord will have relationships right the way across an agency, right? They'll have their relationships in client accounting. They'll need to do my tax return. I can't get hold of my statements I've got a missing statement for last year, whatever it might be. The relationships they'll have in property management. I mean, look, you as a landlord, surely, you don't want to be hearing from your agent. You just want to receive your statement, receive your funds. That's it. Good renewals. Keep your voids low. That's what it's all about, right? But when you need them, I think you do need that relationship. And I think those relationships span across the business rather than just the front end relationship or the CRM relationship.
Couldn't agree more. And I mean, there's that phrase where you can build up capital, can't you? Where you got kind of stuff in the bank in terms of building that relationship, or when anything kind of hits the fan, having had being able to talk to them before and built up that empathy with them, can only pay off, can't it?
Well, and trust, you mentioned the word trust earlier. I mean, trust is absolutely crucial. Our clients are looking after, significant assets of these, they're asset management almost, isn't it, really? Yeah. For these individuals or companies for that matter, and all around the world as well. They can be anywhere in the world. I mean, I understand the argument for outsourcing things like overflow for phone, the phone system and things like that. I really get that, the money penny type scenario. I understand that bit of the outsourcing, but I would just say be cautious if you're considering outsourcing your property management, your client accounting, and really, really do your homework.
I think that's the point, is it's horses for courses, isn't it? Certain people have different setups and everything else. But on the whole here, when we're talking about scaling, when we're talking about getting to, two sides, as so many of your clients are, that ethos of doing it for yourself can't really be beaten, can it?
Well, it certainly seems that way, and the data suggests it, and the evidence is there to say, look, the companies that have scaled, they're providing an end-to-end service, which is why we years ago when we were going through a product transition, it was, we need the one system concept here, we need the end-to-end solution. So we were always on board with this kind of end-to-end, one system, one contact record, one property record, everything accessible from everyone in the organization. I mean, it's what we pioneered effectively.
It absolutely is. And it's one of the things that over the years, I remember, before, but my previous company was, we just lost so much business because so many forward-thinking agents said, we have to have that, we can't have Chinese walls between departments. It's hard enough getting the teams to work together as it is anyway, without having silos of data, making that 10 times more difficult. and anything else like that. And I think one of the other angles is, look, I'm a massive fan of outsourcing. I see where outsourcing can work, but there's no argument as well. Is if so many people are on an outsourced solution, how do you differentiate yourself? If it becomes homogenized and everything else, where's your ability to stand out the crowd in terms of some of those key areas? And so instantly you're competing on a whole set of smaller areas of the business, aren't you?
Yeah, it becomes a generic service rather than that. And again, as we were talking about automation at the start of this call, it's everyone does the same thing in this, but they all have their own take on it. And our service does this in this way, and that's what they feel is the better delivery of whatever it might be, renewals or whatever we're talking about. But I just that's the bit that would concern me, is like, well, we offer the same thing as everyone else. That doesn't work for me.
Okay.
If I'm pitching business.
Yeah, well, look, it's Halloween next week. I think when this is going out, probably it will have already passed. Let's talk about the horror story from within the industry itself. I mean, we're talking about here about actually, half decent companies, and some of the disadvantages and advantages, looking at it really plainly. But sometimes when it goes wrong, it can go dramatically wrong, can't it? And I'm not looking at the rights wrong of the individual part of it, but I mean, what can agents themselves and the industry as a whole take from what happened to ARPM? And I think it's worth it. Do you want to just, explain to people, if they don't know, what APR did? And obviously, just so people do know, they went out of business and a lot of agents were left really high and dry, weren't they, at that point when it happened?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I guess that's the disaster scenario. I can't remember the type of liquidation it was. I think a members voluntary liquidation, something along those lines, which at least gave everyone a chance.
Yeah.
But the problem is, and however good those intentions were, when that happens in a business, you've got to wait for someone, an auditor, to come in.
Yes.
They've got to get to grips with what's there, what isn't there. Well, hang on a minute, we've got to pay our landlords in 11 days' time.
Yeah.
I just don't think it works in our industry. I think, and again, that's why that was probably in the back of my mind when I was talking about do your homework, do your due diligence. Make sure you are 99.9% sure that you are going with the right outsourcing company. I mean, we had a client actually who had outsourced to ARPM. Wow. And they were still using Veco sort of front end and all the periphery services that our software can deliver. But again, they just thought, right, let's get rid of the headache. Got rid of the headache. 2 years later, found themselves with the biggest headache of them all.
With a migraine.
Yeah, a bad one. Yeah. A 2-dayer. It was awful. And they came to us, and the only solution we had for them was to basically, because they're an existing client, say, right, we are going to put a team on this. And it was a lot of out of hours, and it was Elena and her team here. They just blitzed it. I mean, it was 2 weeks of hell for everybody on both sides, of course, because you can't implement a software that quickly with everything going on in the business on top of it. So we did a bit of a miracle, to be honest, on both sides, not just talking about our side, on both sides. And it was an amazing turnaround, to be honest. And thankfully they were one of the first out of it, because no one could get hold of their data. Yeah. No one could get hold of information, reports, output, because there was all this legal stuff going on. And I just think that would be the thing that would concern me the most about outsourcing.
I think just so we put this into context, almost everyone who's watching this will have been through probably one CRM or estate agency software, property management project in their day. Everyone will probably at that point start getting a twitch or wince, because even when they've done right, when you're moving the foundations of something, that is a bloody difficult job. And so whilst 2 weeks might not sound like, it's not like changing a phone in 15 minutes there. That's because you know what, you're doing a whole lot more than that. These are interconnected systems, and everything else there. So 2 weeks, when you compare that, normally a project, you'd like to have at least 2 to 3 months, wouldn't you? What ordinarily would be my guess to do.
Definitely.
You know, looking at data conversion, doing it there. So I've been in those scenarios before where, you know, and it really is working out of hours. So is it Elena from your side, you say?
Yeah, I mean, she was outstanding. She is outstanding, and just that particular project, and obviously the support of her team and everyone here. And again, it's look. Sometimes you've got to put the shift in, right? I mean, they've been a client for 15 years. You know, you don't just say, well, hold on, you guys decided to outsource.
That's not,
you don't want to be that guy, do you? We did tell you. No, you don't.
No, that's not the time for I told you so, is it? Much as you know.
No, that's the time for tell us what you need us to do. And it was one of those.
That's what we said before. That's where the difference between, you know, you're sat there in the wonderful boardroom now, and there'll be lots of boardrooms like that where the client comes first or our team comes first, and actually when as it hits the fan as it did there, it doesn't actually, you know, it doesn't come true, does it? That tells the difference between a company that's actually really going the extra yard for it. And I think, you know, massively, you know, it needs to be applauded, that kind of thing, because, you know, you're not just, you know, you're not raising a ticket, are you, on some online help desk in there and waiting, you know, patiently for it to come back or everything else. This is where phone calls are burning off the hook. You're as you said, hand in glove, you're working with their team, because it won't happen without that there. But there's going to be a lot of residual loyalty there from both sides now, isn't there?
Well, absolutely. And again, look, I'm sure you'd like to think any company would do the same, given the sort of length of relationship.
I think you might be overplaying what most people in this industry do or would be able to do, to be honest. But anyway,
that's why we like the Estes thing. You know, it's just like let other people. If we're not good at, if we're a bit shy, if you like, of shouting about ourselves, then we'll let other people do it. That's kind of always worked for me.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a story. I mean, one of the things that I was actually, funny enough, it was at another bash. But, I was talking to one of your clients, and they were talking about the fact, you know, that they, you know, they're real people, that we can talk to them. That was the thing that they really got out of you. But I was doing, unusually for me, I was doing a bit of work myself. And I was doing one of our kind of supplier MOTs, our consultancy sessions, and I was sat on board with an agent, and I was telling them, and I was quite proud of myself, that one of the things we see, you know, we have 1,500 dashboards that agents have built up with their suppliers, and one of the things we work on is having a kind of early warning system for people if those net promoter scores suddenly fall off the side of a cliff, because ordinarily it's a pretty good warning that either there's been a price increase, which you can check straight away, or something else is happening. And one of the things that, and they actually said to me, is that it's interesting you mentioned that, because we were an ARPM client, and this is a single office agent that's only been going just under 2 years, and they ostensibly had to write off £20,000 because they just needed to make it right for the landlords. You think about that in terms of, you know,
a lot of their clients did the same. A lot of their clients did the same. You only have to Google it to see the whole horror stories of what people would just to pacify people. And I think it was less pacifying people, Simon. It's probably in their terms and conditions. You know, we've got, you know, you've got to pay your, and most, obviously every agent's T's and C's will have a certain amount of days where you pay your landlord after you've received the rent. Absolutely. Well, you can't wait, as I said, you can't wait for a liquidator to spend 2 months trying to figure out whose client is whose.
If your landlord's going to be cool with that.
Exactly. So that doesn't work at all.
So just taking it a little bit further, what do you think the implications have been of that, essentially, that liquidation there? I mean, are people just, you know, that they're going to be, I suppose at the beginning, they're just going to be running shy from any thought of outsourcing, aren't they? As much as that might be an overreaction. What do you think those implications are, though?
But it's interesting you said it was a startup that you were talking to. You know, we had the opposite. It was like a long-established agency. So again, people have obviously done it for different reasons. I really get the startup reason, because then you've got to be, you know, laser focused when you're in a startup to make sure that you're getting to a position as soon as possible where you're actually turning a profit, which can be some time. Yeah. But I guess that I would just say that I've not been close enough to it, to be fair, to comment on the outcomes of the liquidation process. But you know, let's face it, there won't have been 100% of the monies there, would there? Let's take an educated guess at that. And I'm not casting any aspersions on anyone or
I think
any.
that's an obvious. No, I think it's an obvious
process,
point,
but
yeah.
I wouldn't, I would have thought if it got into that sort of trouble. And there was a question, interestingly, at the time about, now it pops into my head about, they weren't charging enough. That's interesting. You're not charging enough to make it work. And that was one of the key reasons why it got into trouble. I mean, that's frustrating. I mean, that's just a classic get what you pay for, right? Well, if they discounted or you push them into a discounted situation, ultimately that has backfired on everybody.
Yeah, that race to the bottom sometimes has consequences, unfortunately, as we're seeing in this case, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, look, no, there's sadly a lot of redundancies happening in the industry at the moment. We've often talked about it, one-to-one down the years when we were on opposite sides, for example. And it's like, you've got to hold your price, because we've got to have a successful business model. If we can only deliver good software if we have a successful business model, and that's not about charging the right move type 72% margins, nowhere near. But you've got to be able to make a reasonable margin in order to keep going, keep developing, start from scratch every X amount of years. And I think that's that's something that we all need to be mindful of, because a race to the bottom in any scenario, we've seen what happens, right? Look at the onliners. I mean, it just, that's another example.
That's famously the biggest one of all. They had to put their prices up, was it 20% or whatever else there, and still in a tight place and everything else. And look, that's as ever, it's the first wave. It's like the first wave of technology. It'll bounce back and come back in some format. But what is almost certain is it won't come back at that price point.
It can't.
It can't. And well, unless you've got the automation, and of course you see where I'm going with this, obviously down the line, because that's true though, isn't it? The margin, that you can do it with the margin. A margin comes in two levels. It comes from charging a fair price, but if you can bring your cost base down, that's another way of doing it. And if you can get two in tandem, that's great. Look, there's no one in this industry that knows less about running a tight ship than me. I mean, genuinely, all that stuff. But all I've ever realized, instinctively or otherwise, that margin gives you options, doesn't it? It gives you the ability to either layer in service, to invest in things, and that's why you have to be so on the ball with making sure that you are getting the right fee that you deserve to give it. Otherwise, people need to be honest about it and say, we can't possibly deliver that service for that price.
We stopped sort of, let's say, running around the country doing demos years and years ago, because there was so many startups saying they can deliver software at £25 a month. I mean, it's
Hartlepool one day, Plymouth the next.
Yeah, but we quickly realised that we had to do a lot more qualification.
Yeah,
we had to pre-qualify a lot deeper than we had been doing, because there was just always that low price point. Yeah. That if someone's going to buy on price, we'd go for it, do it. We'll see you in a year's time, because we'll probably be having.
Come on, we said we weren't going to say I told you so. Let's keep it.
Well, we did, yeah, but we generally did. We generally were having that conversation, and hopefully we were modest enough not to say we told them so. We just say, look, that's why we were pitching what we were pitching at the time. That's why we were talking about investing in not only the platform but the training. Invest in training, and where the people say it's free, or as I would say, included. Yeah. Or invest in it, because the more, as I said, we did some stats recently where just anonymously we just looked at sort of 5 clients and looked at the ones who had invested the most over the years. And I mean, it's hockey stick growth. I mean, it is, you get that ROI, right? When we know that, but sometimes it's hard to, you said earlier, how do you demo automation? How do you sit there? You can't. Yeah. You can talk about it, but then the investment gets in the way almost. So we started to build our tiered pricing, because we knew that the investment was blocking the decision, and we wanted to unblock that. And now we've got floods of it now. We had a flood of clients over the last 2 to 3 years since we put those tiers in place. are now automating so many things.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. So we've spoken about, some of the reasons for and against, and obviously, the risks of this. Let's focus on some of the real positives here. As I said, some of the real strengths here. We asked you to look at the just five of the top areas, on the top repetitive business processes, which when automated can bring, significant efficiencies to an agency, and of course that most important margin hopefully at the end of it. So if we just kick off, first of all, rent arrears is one of the key areas, isn't it? Do you want to just give us an outline of, in terms of on each of these, how you're able to help out over at Veco?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, not to be too repetitive, but each of our clients does the same thing slightly differently, and arrears is a great example of that. So I'll take an example of a client who came to us years ago and said, right, this is how we want to do arrears. At 1 minute past midnight, we want to know who's in arrears. And at 9 a.m. the next morning, we want to be contacting them to say, what's happened? Something might have gone wrong here. Very polite message. And we want to text message them. We said, yeah, that's fine. So we can set up an automated process, midnight +1, who's gone into arrears, 15 tenants, 150 tenants, 5,000 tenants, whatever it is, all get a text message, 9 a.m. the next morning, very polite. We noticed that your rent wasn't paid on time as usual yesterday. Please, can you correct this ASAP, link to the payment gateway, whatever it might be. But then where we come at the problem is, well, what if you haven't got a mobile number for them? And I know that's this day and age, but what if you haven't got a mobile number for them on your CRM system? Okay, we'll email them. Great. What if you haven't got their contact details? Or what if we just what if it to death? To a point where it's like, okay, we haven't sent the text message, we haven't sent the email, there's a report of the 3 outstanding tenants in arrears, that goes to our admin team.
That could be a flow chart that just goes as long as your arm, can't it?
It can do, and that's why we'll see, particularly larger clients, they might have 20 to 30 processes running on arrears, because obviously there's lots of stages right the way through to a potential eviction, I guess. But it's a case of what ifing the scenario right the way through, and we talk about speccing things out really well, because if you can spec a problem out really well and really challenge the problem and challenge the solution, more importantly, you can end up with, as I said, 15, 20 automated processes across your business that, instead of having someone within your admin team who's spending 3/4 of their day chasing arrears, well, they might need to spend 15 minutes of their day chasing the 3 people who you don't have the contact details.
And then, sorry, Richard, I mean, just on that there, that's, it's really important point, because on the face of it, it's like you're saving just a few minutes. But when you max that out by, with all of these efficiencies, one of the things that often gets missed is a few minutes here, a few minutes there, doesn't sound like much. But when you average that out across most businesses against the number of properties they manage, or against the number of people within the office, or whatever the payments are, whatever that metric is, that's where you can really end up with some gold dust, can't you? And literally, you're almost on the front foot against your competitor from before the office door opens, because a lot of it's been done whilst they're still ploughing through so many of these administrative processes.
Well, I think, like I say, it's the key reason I think that the clients that have invested with us have scaled up, because they have done exactly what you're saying. Yeah. The other thing is, forget the top line, which is obviously very important. It gives them more time to do their job, get the deals in. But you're building a more profitable business. If your headcount is as low as it can be, and I'm not saying you run on a skeleton staff here, I'm just saying you need to set your stall out. Say, well, how many heads do I need per 100 managed properties? And that's the sort of conversation we have with clients, and say, well, look, at the moment you've got X, well, we can get you to Y. And then if they say, no, you can't, it's impossible because we do this. And then you start to, over time, it becomes a real sort of consultative piece to say, well, this is what we've got. This is what we do over here. This is what we do over there. And let's talk to you about how we can streamline all that. Because again, our aging clients, obviously most do sales and lettings, and we help them out with both. But there's value then in in that business. They're growing their top line, which we know you can take a multiple of, I don't know, between 1.2, 1.5 revenue. Great, nice multiple. But the premium, you'll get the premium when you're actually showing the bottom line as well, and say, well, actually, yes, we're doing X 100,000 or millions of fees in a year, but actually, look at our bottom line. Look how efficient we are. That's when you're going to get the premium. And look, I don't know, most people in business to build value, right? To build value in their business, build value in their brand.
Everyone's exiting at some stage, and it's just what you get for it and when it happens, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. So do you want to get 1 or do you want to get 1.5? I'm sure we'd all want to get 1.5 in that scenario. So
don't hit me with your trick questions. I'll come back to you on that. I'm not very good with maths. Richard, talk to us about tenancy renewals. That's the next area we're going to look at. How does Veco support you on that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, well, again, anyone who's worked in a renewals team will know how much goes into it, and also the timing. Yeah. Timing is always crucial. We find. And it just in terms of automating all of those processes and the comms, the comms between everyone, are you going to renew? What are your plans? Getting all that information going out in an automated fashion. And the one thing I'd like to talk about at this stage actually is the one sort of kickback or pushback we get with automation is, well, we don't want our tenants, even our clients, anyone feeling they're being dealt with by a robot or an automated system. Yeah. The way we bespoke our automation is it goes out from, it could be the individual property manager, their right email, signature, everything. It can feel as personal as someone typing that email out. And
that is where the best technology and automation comes from, isn't it? Is where obviously it's scaling up as if the person's there. And I think when it's done right these days, it's almost impossible. In fact, I would say it's impossible to tell the difference. But that's where the scoping is the most vital thing, isn't it? And that experience of having done this before. Obviously, you've got to have the capability within the tech. But that's where that knowledge of you sitting down, scoping it out really comes to pay off, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And some of us are clients of our clients. Some of us are landlords of our clients. And even sometimes I have to think, is that one automated or not?
Yeah.
Honestly, that sounds like a cheesy line, but I'll get a text message. I'll think, it's from Andy, who's the property manager, and it's from the number, and I know I can reply to it. I'm like, I'm not sure if Andy sent that or not. Yeah. And that's just and that's when you've got hundreds of processes running all the time. You go out and do an inspection. You've got to do the physical things, right? We've got to go and do the inspection. We've got to get the renewal process done in this scenario. But all the comms and all the reminders and all the internal reporting and your T minus 90 days. Here are the contact letters. Here's the emails. It all goes out. And I know one of our guys always says, automate never takes a day off and it never has a sick day. Yeah. So, there's that scenario of that, you can only rely on good people so much. Good people will always still drop the ball.
Yeah.
We all do. I know, no matter how good we are, we all there's always a time where you'll miss something or you'll get something wrong. And that's where automation kind of it's the safety net. You could call it a bit of a safety net as well.
It's something that it's very hard to take on board almost as a human being, that when you look at this, that humans are the ones that we always look at where the mistakes can go wrong with technology, and obviously it's there, but actually time after time the consistency comes from the tech. That's the point. Otherwise, you shouldn't be getting tech to do it, is the simple truth, because there's still it's still not there yet. But in terms of the stuff we're talking about here, tech over humans all the time when it's repetitive.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, we all automate certain tasks that just as standard, things like deposit schemes, things like that, as APIs, and it's all built in and it's not bespoke in any way. It does a job, but it is an automated process. I mean, I remember when the deposit schemes first came out, and I remember we built this API with TDS, and we're going out, we're talking about it. And I remember this poor person at the back of the room sort of put their hand up. I thought, got a question here. That's my job. And I mean, you just think, oh no, I'm the worst person in the world here. But actually, the response to that is, well, what else could you be doing in the organization? And it comes back to that you know, it's not a case of culling it. It's not a case of culling people or headcount. It's, well, if we've got 100 people in our agency and we've got, I don't know, whatever, 2,000 managed properties, how do we get to 3,500 with 100 heads?
Yeah, being able to grow it without extra headcount is the other point of view. That's a lovely way. I always really struggled with that as a champagne socialist or limoncello liberal. I'm not sure which one I am, but you know, it was always that point. You would literally sometimes see people in demos in tears, and almost to the degree we had to start having a chat with you know, principals of the business and say, look, there will be a change at the beginning of this. When they see systems like this, they will, you know, start, this is amazing. And then there's that realization that the penny drops. But again, we have to come back to, you know, the whole point about there is always an almost endless list of other more proactive tasks they could be assigned to anyway, more dollar productive, that you can be doing better than your competitor. And that's the key element you need to start thinking about, isn't it? And simply, it doesn't make sense for a human being to do it if a tech can do it better and far cheaper. That's just, if not, you're just riding the road to you know, bankruptcy, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah, no, I'd agree with that 100%.
So talk to me about Veco's ability to automate in terms of property matching. I mean, what are we talking about there?
I guess, you know, it's not, I mean, I know we were talking about outsourcing property management and client accounting, but when I think about it, it's like, well, all of our systems do property matching, right? Yeah. They all do it. You know, we got matching, we got false matching, you know, we've got the, you know, we cover all that on a sort of a one-to-one basis. But a lot of our clients, and I really like these ones, is like they'll set a time, and it's usually, depending on where they are in the country, commuter time, Thursday, Friday, they'll just do a sweep of the database, new properties, price changes, sales and lettings, ping it out.
So anything that's been missed or added essentially on that,
added, changed, moved. And again, if that's happening constantly, you just having a night. I'm not talking about overkill. I'm not talking about sending someone an email every night. But I'm just saying, catch them at the right time. And they might say, well, actually, we want to send this out at 6:30 on a Friday. And we're going to send it once a week. So it's not overkill, but it's going to capture all the week's changes.
So it collates them. So yeah, what you're saying is it's not spamming them and sending them all off. It's doing the sweep. It's putting them all into one email if there's multiple matches. And then, you know, doing that sensibly so they're getting what they need at the right time. And
it's relevant to them, of course. And I know I just mentioned false matching. I always remember saying to our developers, like, we need to build in a false match. And what do you mean a false match? So, well, we want to be able to show someone a property or match them to a property that doesn't match any of their criteria, their search criteria. You imagine the blank looks I got in that development room.
It's completely counter-logical though, isn't it? So it's
and we know developers are very logical people. And you know, when you're in a room with them and they're all looking at you, knowing they're more intelligent than you, and you're trying to explain something totally illogical will make sense. You've just taken me. I
was getting very melancholy remembering that look as they all looked at me like I was an imbecile.
Yeah. Well, I get it daily, so it's fine. But yeah, it was just again, at the end of the day, it's okay. We'll do it, but it doesn't. It's not right.
But it's never going to work.
But then the stats, the stats bear this out.
It's human beings, isn't it? It's human beings, and by definition, it doesn't always work like that.
But I think there's a stat. I think it's 61% of inquiries don't result in buying that or renting that particular property. And that's where I have the issue with the onliners, for example, where it's all being outsourced to a viewer who is outsourced. You're just never capturing that golden opportunity to say, actually, I know exactly the property this person will want. And that comes back to the people bit and the kind of the intuitive. I know that Mr. and Mrs. Brown are going to love this property, but they don't know it yet. And that's the badge of honor, right? If you can sell someone, you can sell or let a property that's outside of someone's criteria. And that's why I think that weekly sweep with the matching is great, because it's like a news alert, it's a property alert. Have a look at these deals. There's something different there that you might not have considered before. You're going to pop onto your phone and you're sat having a glass of wine or a beer at the end of the week, and you can just have a little look. Your inbox is swamped with the with a million emails, and I just like it. It's just one of my favorites.
Sold on there. Now the next one we're getting to, which I think is one of my favorites, because I know how important, especially when principals of the business and branch managers, on the reporting side of things, how are you able to help with automation in terms of reporting and MI?
Well, it's probably one of the biggest attributes, I would say, because you're not then relying on someone going into the system, which you can do, of course, and you can generate the report or the power grid or the, you know, the management report or that week's stats, and it just serves up the information. It serves up the report in a format that you want, and it goes to the group of people you want it to go to on the third Wednesday of the month at 8:30 a.m. or it's the Monday morning meetings. You know, you don't want to be rushing into the office on a Monday morning, or as we used to do, or sat on your device and having to sort of grab data from here, there, and everywhere, ready for a meeting. It just should serve it up for you. So I think from that perspective, whether it's a board report or any type of report, really, void report. You know, void reporting is something we've worked a lot on with a particular client recently. You know, looking at those kind of fine margins of how can we improve a really good agency. Yeah. Well, if you could bring your void days down by one, across a portfolio of thousands of properties, what's the result in fees? Because we know what the rental is, we know what the price, you know, we know what
almost that forecasting element there of what you can, you know, changing that, what will, you know, if this then that kind of reporting. Yeah,
and the power of one and all that sort of stuff, that kind of Vern Hamish type approach, you know, and it's not us driving the entrepreneurship, it's the entrepreneurs driving us to say, well, how can I make my business better? Well, voids, have a look at it. And of course, then you can talk to other clients about that. It's not like trade secrets, it's just actually, if we were all that bit quicker, that bit slicker, if we can automate this, automate that, and drop our void days down by 1 or 2 or 3, then what's the impact on our fees? Yeah. And again, we go back to what's the multiple on that fee. You think every pound is maybe growing my asset by £1.50. It's you know, again, it's a powerful proposition. We think.
Does it work just on a kind of individualistic basis? So is it just sending? It's having the power to send a single report? Can it be multiple reports? Can it be a pack of reports essentially?
Yeah, definitely. It can collate packs of reports and
that's really powerful. So where a lot of people are, you know, essentially commuting, they can get that sent already to their inbox. Look at that as they're going in prior to whatever meeting it is. That's really
good. And don't get me wrong, you've still got the dashboards and you've still got the insights and you've still got the, you know, I'm talking more that sort of corporate level, BIMI, you know, large regional businesses with regional managers and branch managers, and you might have investors, you might have shareholders, and everyone will want a slightly different pack. Yeah. For the right reasons. So it's making sure that they all get the right pack at the right time on the right day of the month, because they're going to walk into a meeting and they're then armed with everything they need to carry out their job.
Well, I knew that was one of the strengths, and certainly that comes across very clearly. So that's, you know, you can imagine those people who, you know, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it kind of approach there. It's amazing how, you know, when we do surveys, and we do surveys, generic surveys of, you know, CRM stuff, with the frustration that comes out that they know the data's all locked away in there, but they don't feel they can get it out. To have that liberated to them, you know, is very powerful, I think.
Yeah, we don't expect. You know, we don't expect these guys to be SQL experts. You know, they're property specialists. You know, that's someone else's problem, and in this case, it's ours, which is great.
I'll tell you one day when I went on a SQL course and the disaster that followed, but that's for another day anyway.
I look forward to that one.
Yeah, it was shocking. Let's look at the final one of these top 5 you know, main areas of the business that can benefit from these automation to give efficiency. Welcome packs. Describe what you're talking about here, if you don't mind.
It's for me, it's that again, you talked about a collation of information. Might be an EPC, might be you know, where your deposits, your deposit information. It's something that a lot of our clients have previously done manually, and we just it's not. I wouldn't say. I mean, I put it in my top 5 because I was quickly prepping for this meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I was asked a question, and there were just the 5 that came to me. And this is one of it could be anything that's you can think of that would be like a welcome pack. But if a tenant's moving in, you've done a lot of work to get that to that stage, right? You've handed over those keys. If the last thing you do is forget to send a welcome pack, or you forget to send some information, it would be a real shame, because we know how hard someone will have worked to get that, to get that move in over the line. And I just think it's one that you think, okay, it's possibly something that can slip or not be done. And really, do we want to leave that to an administrator to say, well, oh, don't forget to send the pack out, or maybe it's on a task, on a workflow. I just think things like that, when the work's been done, someone's gone out and done the work, done the check in the inventory, the EPC, they've done all the work. We've done all the work. So why are you then going to go and then package it all together? So welcome packs is just something I like. I like to talk about.
And what I like about this is this is like, top influencer list. This is all about preference, but you see it across a client base here. What I'm going to encourage people to do is, and we haven't spoke about this, so I hope this is okay, but please write in, if you can drop me a line at simon@kerfuffle.com, and just give us your 5, what would, if you could ask Richard, and we'll obviously pass these on to Richard, which are the areas of the business that you would like to understand can be automated or anything else? And we'll obviously pass those on to you, Richard, if it's okay, and you give your overview as to what's possible, what you're able to do currently for clients, and what might be possible, because there are so many agents out there at the moment that are looking at these areas, but I think sometimes they need to just understand what is possible and what isn't.
Yeah, happily do that. Yeah, we'd happily do that. And what I would say is then just think of it as a repetitive business process. Think of any repetitive business process in your business, and all we need is a trigger. And a trigger could be a time, a day, a change of field, anything. As long as there's a trigger, we can automate that repetitive business. To a degree,
almost let you guys worry about that in the scoping for now. Just figure out, which of the bits there you think, oh God, if only we could get some help there, would be a great starting point. That's brilliant. I think one of the things that I love is, if we look at this from looking at the realities of the industry again, you've still got a huge amount of people that are out there on, older packages, like the likes of the CFP, which, let's be honest, great package in its day and everything else, but the idea that you could get this level of automation and everything behind it there. So one of the challenges of a business, because so many, people, property managers, accountants have used these packages, they're almost indoctrinated into using it, aren't they? So the thought of changing is like, oh, I don't want to even go there. But what we're talking about today is one of those reasons, is genuinely the opportunity cost, why managers and principals of business have to be brave and have to look at, looking at what potentially what might be a short-term disruption. As we said, it's never an easy job, but the most important thing is to not overstate how big a job is, because when you've got somebody who is holding your hand, it can be done very efficiently, can't it? Especially when you have longer than 2 weeks to do it as well.
Yeah, it can be, but it's never easy. I would always say, don't think of it as a monetary investment. Think of it as a time investment. Figure out how much time you can commit to it. Yeah. Think about what time of year suits you. I think that's a biggie as well.
Yes, it absolutely is.
If you look at your data, your data should be able to tell you when you're less busy. And then plan it way ahead, plan it a year ahead.
And I think that for me was just the advice I was going to give. I know that a lot of people come in and say, well, obviously, you always got booked out for December, well in advance. There is the amount of breaks that you get in there, and it's so quiet. Sometimes that can be a little bit of a false, in terms of being the perfect honeymoon period. So what I would always be looking at is, look, given that you've got time to do it, is look at the calendar for the year ahead and place some, look at staff holidays. Obviously talk to you guys first and get a feel for what works in terms of your diary and plan it together. And the crucial thing is avoiding no rush, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And don't think there's a magical fairy dust approach to this. It's hard work. Are
you saying my sales technique of pretending it was pixie dust was the wrong one? Well, I suppose that's why I'm not there anymore.
Yeah. I think it's the sort of thing the decision maker, once they make the decision, will probably be stepping away. So yeah, get the buy-in as well. Just make sure everyone's on board and plan it in advance, because we will love that. If we can say, right, in quarter 3 next year, we're going to book in a 2-month project. We love that. That suits everybody then. So it's a little bit selfish, but that's the best way to do it. And also, what do you want to achieve? And I know that sounds obvious, blatantly obvious. This is what you're doing now. That's the as is and the to be. We're talking about this day in, day out. The as is, to be processes. Work them out, scope them out. Because actually, if you don't really want to change, don't change.
I don't know. Do you know, I'm going to ask you, and it'd be really interesting to get your view, given that you're still at the coalface and I'm still in my ivory tower, is, you know, one of the biggest problems, this isn't just CRM, but I think it's most pronounced in CRM software, where you see most failures go on, is the principal of the business may have, for all the right reasons, chosen a solution. And it doesn't, on the face of it, for whatever reason, hasn't seemed to go wrong. And then, you know, it gets into the blame game of looking at the supplier and everything else. And when you look at it in some detail, there's 2 main reasons. Sometimes people might have thrown, you know, too many solutions at the staff, and they just can't take on board anything. But also, one of the main things is the principal of the business or principals of the business might have chosen it, and they've got their own correct reasons, but they haven't managed to communicate as well to all the team members what the benefits are going to be for them. And that, I think, is probably one of the most vital things. So if you can look at this and just sit there and take them with you and say, look, do you know your daily job in terms of X, Y, and Z? That can be automated now. That can be automated now. That can be automated now. We're going to give you back 1 or 2 hours a day. Let's start talking about what else we're going to be able to do in that time, and how much more commission or how much we're going to be able to, you know, to do for our clients. I think that's really where it gets quite exciting, isn't it?
Oh, completely. I think buy-in. We're talking about early buy-in from as many key people as you can. You know, bring in head of accounts, bring in head of property management, bring in head of sales progression, bring in a regional manager, a branch manager. Bring a team in and actually let them make the decision. That would be my advice. Yeah. I think my scariest meeting ever, while I'm reminiscing about demo boots days, was having sold an early version of Veco into a decent London agency. Yeah. They paid. And then the guy rang me and said, "Oh, I need you to do me a favor." "Yeah, what's that?" "Can you come in and pitch to all my team leaders? But I need them to say yes." I'm like, "You signed the contract, you paid."
Yeah,
this is do it. So I learned that lesson early days. Bring them in a bit earlier. Yeah, it was one of the scariest meetings I've ever done. So there
I
you
get
go.
that. Yeah, I don't envy you. Again, over that point, it might have to turn to a couple now. We'll compare war stories. Look, Richard, I've massively, I've overshot, as I always. I can't talk about CRM and keep it down to under an hour, so I do apologise for that. But let me just summarise in terms of as I see it. So look, if we're looking at 3 main takeaways here, is look at what those efficiencies can be gained through automation. You don't have to do it by yourself, by the way. Pick up the phone to these guys. They've done this a million times. Let them walk you through, and they'll be able to look at the opportunity cost, what you can gain, and obviously what the benefits will be. I think that's the first thing. You know, the in-house benefits of doing property management and accountancy in terms of the relationships that you retain and
joined up relationship. Yeah.
That joined up relationship, the communication, and those additional opportunities that it might bring to, you know, do they have other properties and things like that? All of that increases every touch point you have with them. That's that key point about rather than outsourcing, looking at the keeping it in-house. And then, of course, coming back to this has to stay on every single time we talk, isn't it? That one system approach there in terms of anything else. I've told you a million times, but I won't apologise for it. I used to cadge a living for doing the consultancy. I used to walk into every agency, and if they didn't have a sales system and a letting system on the same package, that was day one. You know, the most obvious bit of advice that we knew would bring the biggest low-hanging fruit. That horrible phrase, but there isn't a better one for it. So those three, I think those 3 for me, key takeaways on top of there. You know, as I said before, if you want to reach out, just drop me a line, simon@kerfuffle.com, and just ask for the, you know, what can happen in terms of just in terms of the automation, and we'll forward that to you through your team and let them see what's possible.
Sounds great. We'd love to. Yeah, love to do that.
I'll let you get to whatever your poison is, whether that's a curry or a pint, Richard. Thank you so much for taking time explaining to me again today.
No worries. Thanks for your time. Good to see you.
Cheers.